to the Recovery Revolution. Welcome to the revolution, the recovery revolution. My name is Pat Kempfer, and this is the WIRCO All-Recovery Radio Recovery Revolution podcast. I appreciate you joining us. If this is the first time that you've either listened to or watched this podcast, as it is now available in audio and visual, I appreciate you being here, whether it's for your own good, your own recovery, or you just care enough about someone in recovery or just the recovery movement in general. I think that's amazing. And, you know, we need all the support we can get, including from ourselves. So, I have had an interesting week. It's almost like, it's almost a little too crazy to just kind of lay on you. But I am confident that all of you have, seemingly survived everything in your lives up until this point. So I'm sure you can probably handle this too. It's a little weird, but such is life. So let's back up just a little bit. No, not literally. Let's kind of just let's trace back on a couple of events, and I'll see if I can't bring this all to light cohesively and within a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so last Friday night, I attended a 12-step meeting in Oregon, Wisconsin. I was invited there by a close friend. He asked me to come to be supportive of him in his recovery, and I was like, well, yeah, of course, I'd be happy to do that. So I went out there, and being that it was a coffee shop, of course, they have coffee, but I brought a little bit of my own. And by the time I got out there, though, it had gotten a little cold. So about halfway through the meeting, I decided I wanted to maybe just top off my coffee. So I went up to the counter, and I said, that I had about half a cup needing a refill. Would it be possible to just purchase half a cup of coffee? And they thought that was kind of amusing. And I don't know. I guess I'm weird like that, but they thought it was funny, and they were willing to accommodate me. So I did. I purchased half a cup of coffee, and went over to prepare the coffee in the way that I like it, and I saw that they didn't have any soy milk, which is my preference, given how I have a particularly sensitive digestive system. Now, after years of just eating literally anything I could get my hands on it in times of desperation through traveling, hitchhiking across the country, bouts of homelessness here in Madison and other cities in the nation, and just basically just a recklessness when it comes to diet. And then not to mention, like the effects that the drugs that I have done throughout my life, namely heroin, which basically constipates people, and then later consistent alcohol use, which does almost the exact opposite. So, it's no wonder my my digestive system and bowels are so confused and just sort of upset with me. But so I try to be careful as best I can. I've had to change my diet pretty radically. And what that means is that I just don't eat a lot of the foods that I used to eat. And I don't consume a lot of dairy products, except in coffee when soy milk is not available. So I asked them if I could get some soy milk from behind the counter. And I think it's just not used very often there. So they had to go into a refrigerator. Excuse me. And retrieve some for me. So I took it over to the counter where my coffee cup was sitting, and put in just like a splash. Well, suffice it to say that I knew immediately that this soy milk was maybe a little past its expiration. But being the courageous tempter of fate that I am, who always seems to want to tote the line of danger, I thought, well, it's just a splash. What's the worst that could happen? Well, nothing happened right away, of course. I mixed it in and it seemed okay. Didn't taste too funny. And then, went about my night. Later on, I was Ubering, doing my Uber thing, driving around town. I was over on the west side of town and on my way to pick up a new passenger, when suddenly I had to fart. Now let's try to be as mature about this as possible. As possible. But yes, I felt a pressure, and I'd been feeling some pressure kind of leading up to this, but this was like kind of a lot of pressure very suddenly, and I was like, oh my God, I really this is going to be booming. I could just tell that this was going to be an event, and God, I wish I had sound effects, but yeah, I knew it was something. This was going to be really something. So I put my window down, and I attempted to relieve this gaseous pressure, and I couldn't. It was, it was difficult. Like there was some sort of like an obstruction, I guess you could say. And I was like, I had to really sort of bear down. I had to really push down with my diaphragm. And when I finally expelled the gas, and it was, I believe it was just gas. At first, I just believed it was just gas, but it was loud. It was very abrupt, and there was like a sharp pain that went with it. And then suddenly, I became very lightheaded, and I started to black out. And my body became very, very cold. And like even in my feet, I felt like as if maybe like I wasn't like there was like a tingling sensation. Now, before I go on, you have to. This is where it becomes not so much a funny story anymore. You have to appreciate the fact that in the last year and a half, someone either very close to me or relatively close to me has perished as a result of either addiction or depression. Friends of mine, new friends and friends that I've known for years, have been literally dropping off like flies as a result of either suicide, where people have just they've succumbed to the hopelessness that they've felt, and they give into that, and they take the action of just abruptly ending their lives, or the reckless use of drugs with sort of the apathy attached that that could kill them, and willing to take that chance, and who knows, who's to say how many of them went with that direct intention, and then people who maybe were just trying to just ease the pain of life, and were all too successful. There have also been those who simply came to the end of their run, and it seemed rational and justifiable to see them go. Speaking specifically of my dog Buddy, who I had to put down just literally just over a year ago. In fact, it was just a year. The day before, it was just a year. The day before this episode, on Friday. So, with all of that in mind, and when I say people have been dropping like flies, I mean I know that that's something that people say often, in recovery, when we're talking about the consistent demise of using addicts and whatnot. But I want you to understand that literally, on average, someone I know dies every 6 weeks. Now that is a startling average to be to be looking at. If we were living 150 years ago, or maybe even 100 years ago, this maybe would make sense. When people were still dying off because of a lot of the diseases that were common in this country. But since the use of like vaccines and antibacterial soaps, just sanitation in general, since the meat and dairy packing industry, obviously there's some irony with the dairy part there, but people are safer in so many ways. So to see such a drop off of human life is it's unbelievable, and it's been taking a serious toll on me, emotionally, psychologically, and also physically. Sleeping has become difficult. Eating is something that I have to. It's like, unless I'm like sitting down in a restaurant in that very specific environment, it's like I'm not like thinking about eating unless, unless like I get to the point where like I become like lightheaded almost, and like that's like my signal, like, oh, I got to eat now, because abdominal discomfort is just sort of like a normal thing for me, just regardless. So with all of that in consideration, when I suddenly had this feeling of great cold rush over my body, and feeling myself blacking out after this very strong, abrupt, sharp pain inside my body at the result of bearing down to force this gas, I did not think that it was too far out to assume that perhaps something had just ruptured inside my body, and that I was now bleeding out. That seemed like a somewhat logical assumption. And I was terrified. Let me tell you, I was scared beyond belief. Um, Surprisingly, I didn't literally shit my pants or piss myself, as people sometimes do in great fear. But or or when they expire. But that's literally like just a complete relaxing of those muscles. That's not so much a psychological response. But so yeah, I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do at first. I was confused. It was hard to think straight. Um, and I was just really trying to hold on and keep conscious. So the first thing I did, this sounds a little silly, but I canceled the ride I was going to pick up a passenger, like I said, and I canceled that ride, and then I called 911, and I got on the phone with them, and they're like, what's your location? And I said, I'm mobile. They're like, what? I'm like, I'm mobile. I'm driving my car. I'm going to the emergency room, and if you could you alert them that I'm coming? They're like, well, no, we we don't really do that. And I was like, well, I don't know what's just happened, but something has just happened, and I think I may be bleeding out. There may be internal bleeding. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep my eyes open. And they're like, do you need an ambulance? And I thought about that. Do I want to pull over? Do I want to pull over and wait? And I was thinking, no. Like in moments like this, if what I'm thinking is actually happening, um, time is very, very much of the essence and very, like very precious. So I was like, no, I'm not too far from an emergency room, and I believe that I can make my way there if I can just keep it together. Now, if I crash, send somebody to that location, but I'm just gonna try to make it if I can. So I I explained to them where I was, sort of geographically. I was explaining that I was driving uh, east down the Beltline. I was going about 60, 65 miles an hour, and and I was doing my best to observe, the rules of the road, obviously, and keep the safety of others in mind. Um, but it was difficult to explain where I was because, like I said, I was getting, it was like I was blacking out essentially, and it was like my head was very foggy, and it was hard to. I kept saying the wrong street name. I kept, instead of saying that I was on the Beltline, I kept saying that I was on University Avenue for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, so I communicated to them that I wanted them to, like I said, alert the hospital, and they said they weren't able to do that, but they could connect me to the emergency room, to the hospital. So I was like, all right, let's do that then. So they did, and I explained to them, this is Pat Kempfer, I've just suffered some sort of event. I'm in an emergent situation, and I am ambulatory currently, and I will be there soon. And they're like, I'm sorry, what? They were very confused. I'm like, my name is Pat Kempfer, and I'm coming in there. I want you people to be ready when I get there, so that, like, you can help me, because I don't know what's going on. But I explained, it was like, that I had to fart, and it was difficult. And then when I did, like, I explained the situation, what I'd experienced. And they're like, okay, well, you'll just come in then, Apparently, you can't call ahead and make a reservation at the emergency room. You can't, just call in on a Friday night and then show up and be like, hi, my name is Pat Kempfer. I believe you have a room for me. Like, that's not a thing. And maybe it's because my significant other was a paramedic, and I had the understanding that whenever she was going to the hospital with a patient, that they had to call ahead. That was mandatory, and it just seems like a good idea. Why not alert them and let them know like what's coming in through the door? So in any event, I show up there, and it was very weird because when I pulled into the turnout, and I was like I said, I was driving emergently. I came in pretty hot. And I mean, I didn't like almost crash into the building, but there was a car there that I almost hit, and strangely there were all these police officers there. There was like four different police cars outside, and then I saw two outside of their cars with a dog, with a drug dog across the street, just standing there like they were like going to cross the road, and the dog was sitting down in the grass. I remember this all very clearly, surprisingly, but well, maybe not surprisingly. I mean, given the circumstances, yeah. So I thought to myself, did they call the police because I called 911? Did they think that I was a danger to people for some reason? Like, I didn't indicate in any way that I was under the influence of drugs, or that, that was like in any way a factor in the situation. I didn't inform them of any intention to harm other people or myself. I don't know. I guess maybe I thought, like, did they just think it's just a good idea to include the police on every 911 call, which I don't think is a policy. But yeah, that was weird, and I was like, you know what, forget it. They take my car. I don't care. I'm not even going to talk to the people. I need to be in this building. So I am trying to make my way into the door, and I'm sort of stumbling along. Like I said, I was almost passed out just moments before. So I'm very foggy, and like I said, my legs felt like jello-y. And and my stomach still hurt. So I get in through the door, and I come in and I sort of put my hand down on the counter, and I said, "My name is Pat Kempfer. I was just on the phone with someone. I called and said that I was coming in. I have an emergency." I'm like, well, what's going on? And I explained to them as best I could what had happened, and I'm standing there and I'm sort of looking behind me, and I'm realizing I'm not trailing blood, so I'm not bleeding out of my body. And I was thinking, like, I don't know if I'm bleeding internally, but I think there's a possibility. And they're like, well, you don't seem to be, your color doesn't indicate that you're bleeding out, and I don't know if that's even something you can really see, or if this guy was just an idiot. But he told me to just have a seat, and I guess he was confident that if I were to fall on the floor, that they would triage me and they would, have people there that would assess me immediately. But I was just like, okay, I guess I'll sit. So I sat down, and I was trying to keep it together, and I called my partner Laura. And it was, it was very late, but I called her to, one, because I felt like she would appreciate that, and two, because I was scared out of my mind, and moments ago I thought for sure that I was going to die on the road, if not, like, while driving, that, just whatever was going on inside my body was was taking me out. So I called her, I guess more than any other reason, I just wanted to hear her voice. And by some strange set of circumstances, her phone happened to be not on silent, as it would normally be when she was sleeping, and she was in fact not sleeping. She had still been up working on a project. And, wow, synchronicity. At work again in my life, go figure. And especially with, her and I together. And if you were to listen to previous podcasts, the two of us talking about kind of how we came together. It's been very evident since we first met, and then actually in the events leading up to our first interaction. But anyway, I digress. I called her, explained what was going on, and I asked her if she would be willing to come down and be with me there. She said, of course. By the time she got there, I had gone to the bathroom and saw that I wasn't surely I was not bleeding out, so that was good. And my head was kind of clearing up, and my stomach the pressure was, somewhat alleviated. It was still pretty uncomfortable, but nothing like pain like that I could describe. Preceding that, who knows? But anyway, but I started to feel kind of silly. Actually, I was like, did I just imagine all of this? What the hell just happened to me? This is crazy. Well, Laura arrives just as they're telling me to come back, and they, walk me to a room, and the nurse asks, what happened. So I explained, in a somewhat more humorous way, and I assure you that I plan on standing up in front of other people and comedians alike to explain this story in with as much levity as one could, because if you tell any story the right way, it's hilarious. So, and I needed the levity at the time just to sort of balance myself out. So I told her what had happened, and without skipping a beat, she offered a possible diagnosis. And she said, it sounds like what you experienced was what we call a vasovagal episode. And basically what that means was the act of bearing down, pushing hard on your abdominal wall, can force sort of like it puts pressure on a nerve and in this artery, and that's what causes people to not only black out, but it can make your blood pressure drop dramatically and dangerously. This is something that generally happens to, I guess you could say, like, typically to like an old man, on the toilet who's trying to, shit, and ends up passing out and hitting his head on, or getting stuck between the toilet and the wall, something like that, which would be terrible, but in a sick, cynical sort of way is still kind of funny. But anyway, so she said that is probably what happened, and I thought, wow, that. She's like, well, how do you feel now? I'm like, my head's feeling a lot more clear, and I'm feeling remarkably better considering how crazy next to death's door I felt, just a short time ago. So she said, well, that was probably what happened. I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And Laura concurred. She's like, yeah, from what I understand, and she's very knowledgeable about, not only anatomy, but like, how to, those sort of one thing into another. She has a good head on her shoulders when it comes to that stuff. So it's like, okay, yeah, that would make sense. But again, it also at the time made perfect sense that, like, yeah, I could see this being my death. Why not? Given everything else that's been happening. So I was like, okay, all right. So the doctor comes in. He explains to that this is somewhat common, and while it sometimes isn't cause for great alarm, it could be a signal to something a little bit more serious. So I explained that I'd already made an appointment with my primary doctor for Tuesday, which was now yesterday, and that I would be bringing this up. So we held off on doing any sort of lab tests, things of that nature, figuring that I could just do that during my normal visit. And he gave me a couple of recommendations there, and said, have a good night. So that was that. But let me tell you that in those moments when I thought, when I was convinced that my life was slipping away from me, I did not feel good. And I don't mean in my tummy. I mean, I did not feel good about what I was leaving behind. I felt like there is so much unfinished work. There are so many things that have gone unsaid, so many things that have gone undone, and I would not be leaving this life on a good note at this point. Now, I know there are some out there who, sort of monitor, the happenings of my life, and are cheering me along in great support, and I appreciate that. But with everything else that's going on, and the fact that, despite all of these wonderful endeavors, being so, rewarding in the ways that they are, I'm kind of in some ways working myself, to death. I hate to say it like that, but like kind of working myself to death, often, and almost to the point where it's just like it's almost compulsory. I want to put it out there that I want help, and I don't mean like I just need a lot of phone calls, people telling me again and again, how much they care about me. I mean, that's great. I get that a lot, and I appreciate that. Don't get me wrong. But what I mean is I want people to stand alongside me in these efforts that I put forth. I've been part of several different vehicles, if you will, of recovery that I've attempted to use to transport as much of this positive, hopeful message as possible. I feel like I may have just been redundant, but anyway. But we have collegiate recovery programming, known as Live Free, which has a presence at UW Madison as well as Madison College. There is a strong presence within the UW group, and a close circle of dedicated individuals in that. And I have been part of that group, but unable to really have the means to work within it in an effective way because I'm not a UW student. It's at best, I can work as sort of like, just another helpful, a person of input. And I can take on certain tasks, but there's not really an avenue for me to really utilize my strengths. So I've been trying to integrate collegiate recovery at Madison College, where I believe it is also very needed. However, Madison College does not have the kind of school spirit, you could say, that UW might have, or at least it doesn't have the construct to support that sort of thing. But that, I believe, doesn't matter. I think the fact is that there are people who are dealing with addiction-related issues, not to mention mental health crises, as well as behavioral disruptions. And I think that recovery being, I'm a person who supports all recovery, whether it's mental health, behavioral, substance use disorder, whatever. Um, I support all recovery, and I believe that there are ways to positively impact every person that's looking for assistance. Um, I've always said, there is help if only you ask. Well, also, if only it's available. Well, it is. And maybe people are asking, but somehow the lines are not coming, that it's not coming together. And I think a lot of it is because I'm feeling like in some instances that I'm the only one, with this voice, trying to make the calls and deliver this message. So it's sort of like when I said, like it's sort of like a vehicle. Well, if I'm the only one in the vehicle, it's hard for me to deliver the message from all sides. So I need more people in that vehicle. Uh, Thankfully, a couple of people who have been interested in the past with Live Free Madison College have contacted me, and they're willing to kind of reinvest themselves. And that's very exciting. And while I was walking through the hall with one person, bumped into another who has yet to become involved, but has shown interest and said that he is also willing to come and meet with us this following Monday at our regular time when we have our all recovery meeting, which I'll just announce right now is 4:30 p.m. every Monday in the Student Development Office on the Truax campus. All you have to do is walk in that office, walk directly to your right. You don't have to check in. Just go directly to your right, and there is a door just past a couple of the cubicles, and you'll see it. Generally, it's wide open, propped open. It's a conference room. Just go in there, and that's usually where I would be at 4:30 on a Monday. And we have a format that we can follow, or we can just hang out and talk. And I would love to talk about some of the things that we could do there. I put together a Prezi. If you don't know what that is, I encourage you to look it up. Basically, it's a more fun and interactive PowerPoint, and it explains what collegiate recovery kind of is and how it can positively influence a college campus. What I would like to do is I would like to take that into classrooms. I would like to present it and show it to not only faculty but to the students, of course, the students who I think could definitely benefit from what we have to offer. And it would be linking them to other things in this community, because that's the key word, community, that could positively impact and benefit their lives, whether they're dealing with, like I said, things that are mental health related, whether it be anxiety, depression, which are very common in any hectic college schedule, or matters of PTSD, which a lot of people do, maybe don't even realize, deal with. Behavioral stuff, sex addiction, very common on college campuses. Gambling, I know that's whether we want to believe it or not, these fantasy football sites, that's gambling, and it can make a really negative impact on a person's life. Not to mention the fact that we have a couple of casinos not too far away. So, and scratch offs, like people can be addicted to that. Eating disorders. I myself, like I explained, have really some crazy issues with that, and sometimes could just really need some support. If that just means somebody saying, "Hey, you want to get a bite to eat?" and encouraging that, because that's a lot of what recovery is. It's encouraging positive behavior. It isn't just about let's talk about what we shouldn't do. It's talk about what we should do. Let's do this in place of, because you can't take away a poor behavior without putting in place something positive and expect that person to grow and live a healthy life. At least I don't believe so. And of course, we have so much substance use going on just throughout the country. I mean, in the world. But, we know in this city how bad it's become. Alcohol has been consistently an issue, and sadly, it's all too celebrated. I think it's safe to say everyone knows that smoking is bad for you and kills people. And I know so many people that say they want to stop, but they need support. And so many people have already convinced themselves that it's impossible. So many people have convinced themselves that they can't. And I don't believe that. I know it's possible because I personally haven't smoked since April 11th, 2013. And that was after smoking for 22 years. And believe me, I wasn't just an occasional smoker. I mean, I smoked all the time. And it wasn't until I stopped smoking that I realized how I was using nicotine and tobacco in a harmful way. And I don't just mean the act of it, but the psychological aspect of it, the addictive aspect of it, and how I was using that to treat my anxiety, to treat my boredom, to treat my depression, and to deal with matters that I faced with hunger and eating. So I think it's very important to be able to offer that, and I think it goes also without saying that we're all very much aware now of the growing opioid epidemic, and it isn't just heroin. All too easily are people becoming equipped with pharmaceutical grade drugs, OxyContin, oxycodone, things of that nature, and people are dying. And those that aren't dying are just sedated. And I've said this before. If it isn't Netflix and chill, it's heroin and Paxil. But people are looking for ways out of reality, and I understand. I look for ways out all the time. I know that it's hard. I know that it's very hard. It's been very hard for me. And I want to help people, not just because I think I'm some sort of saint, or I'm just so good at it, because honestly I don't think I am. But I want to help people because I want to help myself. Yes, it's kind of selfish in that way, but that's how it is. And I feel like the more people I can impact, then the better off I can be. I want to live in a healthier community. I want to walk out my door every day and say, like, you know what? I feel good about this in every step that I take, whether I'm on a college campus, whether I'm in my car, whether I'm in my friends' homes, in a restaurant, whatever. So if I can get more people interested in what it is that I'm doing, and we're all kind of doing this together, then that will release me from the bonds of isolation, and I won't feel so much like this is just like it's just me, like I said, driving this vehicle. Also, as I sit here in the WIRCO Recovery Support Center, as you may notice, I'm the only one here. And I come here every Wednesday between 6 and 8 p.m. For these open house hours, and that's public knowledge at this point. And basically, anybody that wants to come here and just find out more about what it is that we can do, that we offer, then the invitation's open. The door is open. Literally, it's open. People can walk in and they see this exit, recovery. It's very clear. And I've invited people here, and I understand that it's hard. I understand that it's scary and it's difficult, and that people may have concerns, fears. But you're not gonna find what you're looking for unless you go looking for it. So that's that. And now I want to also explain that next week, April 6th at 6 p.m. In this room right here, I'll be hosting a meeting geared toward the YPR Wisconsin chapter here in Madison. YPR is Young People in Recovery, which is a nationally recognized organization that has helped craft great models of community recovery programming. And we are able to, in this community, use those models and positively influence young people here in Madison and in Wisconsin. Just last night, actually, one of the founding members and president and CEO maybe, of Young People in Recovery, Justin Luke Riley, sat on a stage with President Barack Obama. They shared a stage, sitting arm in arm, talking about the ways that this country, this government, and this organization not only can help young people, but how it is helping young people. These things are happening. They're not just rhetoric. This isn't theory. This is fact. These things are ready and available and working in the lives of people throughout this country. And they can be working here. Again, though, I can't be the only one in that vehicle. I need the support of the people. I can't have people say, oh, that sounds like a great idea, Pat. Let me know how that goes. I need people standing right with me. We need to be working together, moving as a group, and making these things happen. But I need people to be excited about it. I can't provide all of the motivation and cheer. Although, if I'd stayed in high school going that route, and into college, I'm sure I would have made a great badger. I'm sure I would have made a great cheerleader. I would have been the top of the top of the pyramid, for sure. I'm a pretty light guy, as I said. So, anyway, and I've also been told that I have something of a dancer's body, so I'm sure I could do all kinds of crazy backflips and anyway. Point is that I'm calling out the people in this community. I'm calling you out. If you have an interest in seeing things happen in a positive way, in a recovery positive way, please contact me. You can email me very easily at prkempfer@wirco.org. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah, prkempfer@wirco.org. In fact, here, I'll make it very, very clear. That's it. Contact me there. And if you don't like email so much, you can call or text me. Or you can show up at this address on Wednesdays between 6 and 8 p.m. You can also come here on Thursdays between 6 and 7 p.m. and take part in our All Recovery meeting, which, like I said, is open to all people looking for recovery in any way, shape, or form. You can also check out our Facebook page or our website. Actually, if you go to our website, you can see some great videos of people in this community telling their recovery stories and offering some of their personal experience, strength, and hope. So check that out. Lastly, I'll say this. Given everything that I've experienced over the last year and some months, and what happened last Friday, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I have suffered enough. And that I want to sort of use this opportunity as something of a do-over. Now, I don't know if you were like me as a kid, the way you played, but you know, when you be playing with your friends, you know, when you're kind of doing your thing with your imaginations, you know how kids are, and you know, you realize that you there was something you wanted to do, but you didn't do it quite the way you wished you had, or something. You know, golfers call it a mulligan, but basically, it's a do-over. You know, and I look at my introduction into recovery back in 2009. That was my do-over. That was my first do-over. You know, and it's been almost 7 years now, and I think it's about time. I think it's about time. It's about that time. Things move in patterns and in cycles, often in this world, in this universe, and it only makes sense that that there be a revitalization of sorts. So I'm stating openly and publicly now that I'm beginning again. Not from scratch, kind of how I did back in 2009. Not gonna, you know, put myself in an institution and and you know, start carefully putting pieces of my life back together. I have things going for me now, and I'm not going to lose those things because they're perfectly viable. I may let some things go, some unhealthy things, but for the most part, the things that I have are very good. I need to be able to work these things together more cohesively and in a positive way, in a healthy way that isn't destructive or tearing me down. Because, you know, even a good thing can be used in a harmful way. So I invite anybody who's interested in being a part of this recovery community. We have a lot of work to do, but we can have a lot of fun, and there's so much that we can learn by doing it, about ourselves, about each other, about humanity in general. I know a lot of people feel like things have become so bad, that we're beyond the point of reconstruction, that we're past the point of no return. And the people that are convinced of that, well, you know them, they're Trump supporters. Sorry, I don't mean to be political here so much, but I think that's kind of their angle. That's where they're at. And then there are people that are willing to vote for, you know, Cruz or Kasich or, you know, even Hillary Clinton, who are just, well, willing to, I don't know, I think they're basically just like, I think they also think that we're beyond the point of no return, but they're basically just like, you know, just like, I'm happy just keeping my eyes closed. Let me know when it's all over. And then there are those who still are hoping for a better tomorrow and who are still willing to put in the work to see that tomorrow happen. And you know who those people are. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to tell you who those people are. Because no doubt, if you are one of those people, you felt it. You know, that burn. You felt that burn. Yeah. You felt that burn. So please, don't waste your time April 5th. Go out, find the place that you need to, make sure you have the proper documentation, and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. I'm just going to say that there.